rang him and I said, I'm fed up with this. I'm fed up with all these unfair attacks. I've had enough of it. I'm stepping down from Parliament. And he said to the guy, my colleague, he said, you can't do that. He said, you can't step down. You really can't step down because, I've never forgotten this, he said, because you have forgotten what it took to get there.
Hello everyone. My guest today is a unique British parliamentarian whose place in history was marked indelibly in the British general election of 1987. Yes, 1987, when she became the Member of Parliament for the East London seat of Hackney North and Stoke Newington, and the first black woman, her parents came from Jamaica, though she was born in London, to win a seat in the House of Commons. 2 years ago, she became Mother of the House, which means she is, in this Parliament, the longest-serving woman, 29 years, and still batting. Bravo. She and I have been friends for getting on for 30 years, and that's really hard to believe. If you're British or from the English-speaking West Indies, you will certainly have guessed by now that I've been talking about Diane Abbott. Welcome back to Geneva, Diane. It's good to have you here again.
And it's lovely to see you again.
Diane, I'm going through my notes. There's so much I want to ask you. You've just delivered a very interesting and I must say plain-speaking speech to a full house. Well done. And when I say well done, it's not easy these days since COVID to attract a full house in events like these of the British Swiss Chamber of Commerce, which was your reason for visiting this time. And you can now relax with me, I hope, for a while in front of my microphone. It's been 16 years since you were last here, at least at my invitation. Have you been in and out of Geneva without telling me?
No, I haven't been in and out.
Honestly.
Really? And that's why I was so pleased to get your invitation and come back after all these years.
That's wonderful. Diane, congratulations on being Mother of the House. 30 years is an impressive track record of representation, or maybe even longer than 30 years. Or was it 40 years? 1987. Yes.
I've been an MP for nearly 40 years.
Nearly 40 years. My mistake. It allows you the long and the very long view. And I'm going to ask you about your long view in a moment. But also, when watching Prime Minister's Question Times recently on television, I'm sure that I saw you sitting on the government front bench. Now, is that because you are now a Privy Councillor? And by the way, what is, now that you are a Privy Councillor, you're the Right Honourable Diane Abbott, what does a Privy Councillor actually do?
Well, a Privy Councillor is like a lot of British titles. It's quite ceremonial. But one of the things we do is on the death of a sovereign, we're called together to formally say who the next king or queen is going to be. So the last time I did anything as a Privy Councillor was to come together on the death of the Queen to acknowledge.
Like a proclamation.
Yes, yes. That's. I mean, I think in previous times we did a lot more, but the one remaining sort of non-ceremonial thing is on the death of the king or the queen, we make a proclamation as to who their successor will be.
And that's supposed to be just to confirm authenticity, that this is the monarch, etc., etc., etc. Yeah. Okay. No, I was always curious to know what they actually. And apparently, when you have meetings, you do them standing up or something.
Yes, we do them standing up.
Sounds like a Richard Branson joke. You used to have board meetings and they're all standing up.
Yes.
You know? Oh God, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Dan, turning to say serious matters, but that is a serious matter too, but it's very historical. But to the UK and its domestic politics, you entered the Parliament in the general election of 1987. I think it was the third and last election that Thatcher won. It's a long time ago now, and have always been on the left of the Labour Party. You've also always been outspoken. Some people admire you for that. Some people dislike you for that. But you've stuck to your political guns. My question is, why is the Labour Party so unpopular today when it won a record majority only last year? 411 seats out of 650, from what I've read, a majority of 172. I think I'm more or less right. Give us your sense of why the current unpopularity.
Well, part of the problem was that people voted as much to get rid of the Tories as to bring in the Labour Party. After 14 years, the Conservatives were so unpopular, people were voting to get them out. And when we were elected last year, there was a lot of hope that a Labour government would offer a change, would develop our public sector, particularly the NHS.
That was the manifesto pledge from people like Keir Starmer, change.
Yeah. So people have been very disappointed in the fact that we haven't put the investment into welfare that we said we were going to. We've even tried to cut benefits. And there is a sense as well that Starmer spends too much time overseas being the international statesman and not enough time in Britain looking after British issues. And it's also the case that as much as the fact that Starmer wants to be an international issue, and he's interested, it's also the case that as much as Starmer sometimes seen by the voting public as more concerned about international issues than British issues and the British people, the truth is he's just not a very charismatic politician. There are politicians that I don't agree with. Boris Johnson, for instance, I couldn't disagree with somebody more. But
full of charisma.
Full of charisma. He has a way of drawing people in. Even Labour people, like myself, who don't agree with him at all, but he's very charismatic. And in modern politics, you do need to have that sort of compelling public persona to move forward. And Starmer doesn't have it.
I'm sorry, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
The point about Starmer is he only joined the Labour Party in 2014. He doesn't really like politics. He doesn't really like politicians. And those are failings for somebody who wants to be Prime Minister.
Oh, I didn't realise it was only 2014. It's not so long ago.
People don't realise it.
He was a practising lawyer before that. Yeah.
He was a top barrister, and then he became Director of Public Prosecutions.
Right. Yeah.
But it is unusual, actually, to have been in the Labour Party, or been in your party, actually, for so short a time and become leader. And I think that's one of his problems, because he wasn't sort of steeped in the party. I mean, lots of, party leaders have other professions, but most party leaders have spent some time in councils, local authorities, MPs, and then going on to be their party leader. Starmer hasn't done any of that.
He had no base, he had no tea room relationships in the Commons.
That's right.
Nothing like that.
No base, no relationship. So when things went wrong for him, people didn't say, oh no, we can't do this for Keir. People thought, well, he didn't have the loyalty that a Blair, or he didn't have the charisma a Blair had. He didn't have the loyalty that Gordon Brown had. So yeah, it was difficult for him.
Yeah, I think it's got to be one of the toughest jobs, if you take it really seriously, of being a constituency type MP and then moving into higher office. And I often think it's a little bit like, to use a bad example, the teaching profession. Just because you're a good teacher doesn't make you a good headmaster or headmistress.
Well, exactly. I think that's
two different skills.
I think that's very right. Yeah. And I think, a Starmer, although he's got lots of good attributes, doesn't have the skill set you need to become Prime Minister. That's his problem.
It's current news, Diane, though it's an issue that's been in the media for quite some time. And now it's come to a head, embroiling the royal family, the British Parliament in general, perhaps even the courts in England and the United States. We cannot pretend that the Epstein and now Peter Mandelson affair isn't having an impact on politics and public opinion on both sides of the Atlantic. You must know Peter Mandelson. I mean, we've been in the same party for a long time. He is your party, though he's not from the same group and the wing of the Labour Party as you, would you share with me and our listeners your opinion on what seems to be the never-ending story?
I think that he's greedy and corrupt and has been so from the beginning. Very early on, I think in the 90s, he had to step down from the cabinet because he'd taken a big loan.
It was a mortgage thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he'd not declared it. Then in a few years, he had to step down from the cabinet because he was alleged to have interfered with or behaved in an improper way to get an Indian businessman a British passport.
Oh, I see. He was associated with that, was he? Okay, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention the names, but I won't mention the names, but I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
So he's had to step down from the cabinet twice. And then Starmer took it on himself to make him our ambassador in Washington. And some people said this wouldn't end well, and it didn't.
Do you want to share with me your long experience of the benefits, if there are benefits, of having a person with that kind of background in that diplomatic position as opposed to a career diplomat? I'm interested to know what you think.
Well, I can see the argument for having someone with a political background because Trump, as we can all see now, is a very difficult, very erratic person. So you can see the advantage of having someone with a political background, but it's got to be somebody that is not corrupt. It's got to be someone that doesn't have all these relationships with business and finance.
It's not easy to find a man or a woman over 50 who's been in this sort of business who doesn't have some baggage. I mean, it's not like he's 20 with no baggage. You get the experience, but you bring with it baggage. That's what happens, isn't it?
No, there is a difficulty that as people get older, and they are involved in business and so on, that they may have baggage. But I think with Mandelson, our Prime Minister took it too far. And that's why we're having the problems that we've now got. And also, one of the issues is that he has baggage and people know about the baggage, and it just makes his life and his moving forward very difficult.
You mean Starmer?
Sorry.
I'm getting a bit. Which one do you mean when you say
Mandelson.
he? Mandelson.
Sorry,
yeah.
I should have said
Yeah.
Mandelson, inevitably, he's going to have a certain amount of baggage. But as I said, with Mandelson, it just went too far. And in the era of online and internationalism and in the era of online and personal media and so on, it's quite hard to keep anything secret. It's hard to keep anything secret. And it's not just you can't keep things secret. With online, things can be out in the public in hours or days. And politics didn't used to be like that. But now it is like that. You can find out, you can hear, you can get information literally in hours. And that makes it very difficult to keep things secure and safe.
And let me ask you a slightly more detailed question. With the experience that you've had over all these years, I'm asking you to speculate a bit here because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month. But what are the things that could happen that could be an existential threat to Sir Keir Starmer in this particular issue, the Prime Minister himself?
Well, I think the problems with Mandelson are still a risk. And one of the problems with Mandelson, you've got 3 million information, 3 million files.
These are the pages or the files you're talking about, the dossier.
Yeah. You've got the Epstein files, and there were 3 million items, whether it's whether it's photographs, whether it's files, whether it's information. And the problem with having so many items, so many files, so many photographs, is things come out.
Yes.
And that's what's happening. And it's by no means clear that there isn't more to come out in the next weeks or even months. And that is the problem.
I see. Just turning to something else in British politics, again, it's a question which won't surprise you, but I'd like very much to hear what you have to say. The statistics and polls show that the Reform Party could win the next general election. Nigel Farage, who's also spoken from the stage that you stood on at lunch today, though many years ago, will be in 10 Downing Street. And the traditional party loyalties of many in Britain will be just thrown up into the air. Even the Green Party might make a great leap forward, and I don't mean to cause offence to the Greens by chuckling when I say that, but you know what I mean. Now, you now sit on the Labour front bench, but I have the feeling that your feet, heart and head are firmly in Hackney and then North and Stoke Newington. You must know the pulse of your people. How do you see the evolution of party politics in England today? Leave Wales and Scotland to one side. Does the current state of your party worry you, as it appears that you're heading for defeat and want to ditch your own leader, the Prime Minister? I'm curious to know how you see things.
Well, there's been so much change and so much confusion, really. I mean, once upon a time, you were a Labour person and that was that. I remember as a Member of Parliament, in the sort of background, in a way, you would go knocking on doors in your constituency or your area. You'd go knocking on doors and you'd say, I'm from the Labour Party. And people would say, oh, yes, of course, we're Labour here. What you have is far fewer sort of changing around, far fewer circulating that you had back in the day. And that makes politics much more unstable in a way.
You mean, when you say you mean less loyal people to one particular party or another compared with a generation or two?
Yes, yes. Yeah. When I was much younger, a teenager, and so on, you could rely on loyalty. You could rely on loyalty, even if you didn't necessarily agree with one aspect of your party's policy, you could absolutely rely on loyalty. And now, you can't rely on loyalty anymore. And that makes it very difficult to understand or to prophesy what is going to happen next.
Particularly in the British first-past-the-post system.
Yes.
Like in Switzerland, where you've got this proportional system, it brings another, not one, but different dimensions to representation of the people. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, the issue of representation under first-past-the-post is very difficult and very tricky. And in a way, if we didn't have first past the post, and if we had a different system, it would be a much more stable political process. But now, as I said earlier, you've got the Greens, you've got Labour, you've got Lib Dems, you've got Reform. There's so much circulation. It makes it very hard to foresee what's going to happen in politics.
Dan, I'm going to ask you a slightly personal question, and if I cause offence or you'd rather not answer it, tell me. But those of us who have followed your political career for many years and are fond of you, even if we don't share all of your political views, often wonder how you've ended up in some of the most memorable car crash interviews. I'm thinking of the two tough guys of the British political interview art form, Nick Ferrari of LBC and Nick Robinson of the BBC. I've had Nick Robinson on this show some 10 years ago. Please tell me how it happens that a person like you, with such conspicuous reputation, bags of experience in front of the TV camera, remember your series of Michael Portillo and those people, and the radio microphone too, ended up in a situation like that. What happened to you?
Well, you know, sometimes things go wrong, and I can't say that things didn't go wrong with Nigel Ferrari and so on. But
Nick Ferrari.
No, sorry,
You
Nick.
might get upset if you call him Nigel Ferrari.
I was thinking of, No, sometimes sometimes things do go wrong. But, and I don't want to be offensive, but that same week, actually, when I think for 3 days in a row, there were these television and radio talking about myself and an interview which did go wrong. It was a very simple thing. I had to come up with some figures, something to do with the shadow cabinet and our policies. And instead of saying what I should have said, which was 300,000, I said 30,000. And the debate on that went on for literally 3 days. But the point is, over that same week or so, there were white men getting figures wrong. And it wasn't a 3-day sensation. So,
So they picked on you because of colour as well, you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
female colour.
Yeah, that sort of thing. I mean, I don't like to complain and things do go wrong. But I was very struck that MPs who made similar mistakes about figures, actually about numbers at the same time, weren't, deluged with hostile coverage. But, I mean, you have to be able to roll with the punches. But sometimes it is hurtful. I remember I forget what happened, but I had some very negative television, actually, publicity. And I was quite upset by it, in fact, because I didn't think it was fair. But then I thought, I've had enough of this. I've had enough of all this abusive coverage. I've had enough of being attacked in the way that a white man wouldn't be attacked if they said the same thing. So I rang and I spoke to one of the black men that came into Parliament at the same time as myself. And I rang him and I said, I'm fed up with this. I'm fed up with all these unfair attacks. I've had enough of it. I'm stepping down from Parliament. And he said, the guy, my colleague, he said, you can't do that. He said, you can't step down. You really can't step down because, I've never forgotten this, he said, because you have forgotten what it took to get there.
And I can understand him. I can understand that remark from him, yeah.
And, I'm
right.
not saying it was perfect.
No, but he's right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I can understand
I've never forgotten that.
Yeah. My guest today here at the comfortable Hotel Warwick, Geneva, is the Right Honourable Diane Abbott MP, Mother of the House of Commons, the longest-serving female Member of Parliament. Diane, this is a question in a similar vein, but not quite the same. You'll understand where I'm coming from. We're both of Jamaican heritage, but bat for Britain, though in different ways. Do you think it would be fair to say that? You know me a long time. We're both British in that respect. We bat for Britain.
Yeah, no, I bat for Britain.
I grew up in mid-Somerset countryside, purely by accident of friends that my parents made, Jamaican parents in wartime Britain.
Yeah.
And you grew up in London, north of the river. I've lived away from Britain, getting on for 50 years. You've been thoroughly engrossed in politics, getting on for more or less the same period. Now, I read that some say Britain is a racist country today. Britain is a racist country. There's a lot of noise about it being the race issue. And I read and I hear the words, or I read and I hear the words racist and racism in the British media more now than I ever did growing up in England in the 50s and 60s. That's my feeling. And yet I also know from personal experience that things are better now than they were in the days of my youth when the colour bar, in inverted commas, was a phrase widely used and understood. Now you hardly ever hear it used. It's no, names like Sunak, Badenoch, Javed, Mahmood, not to mention one Diane Abbott, must show that the glass ceiling of race in Britain has cracked, if not been shattered. Am I been away too long from Britain to judge, or would you agree with that rather rambling description, Diane? What do you think?
I think in terms of representation, both in business and finance, people of colour, black people, are much more prominent and much more evident than they were when I was young. I mean, I'll tell you a very simple thing. It's not the most important thing, but I'll tell you one of the simple thing, that when I was growing up, there weren't many black footballers. It was seen as, quite remarkable, some of them. But now, if you look at the Premier League, Arsenal, Tottenham and so on, you will find that even as many as half the top Premier League footballers from the top teams are black, Caribbean or African or whatever, but 3/4. So when you look at the top football teams now, so many of them are black, but yet, even though there are so many top black footballers in the Premier League today, out of all the black footballers in the Premier League, I think there's 2 or 3 of them as managers.
Sorry, finish your point. I have something to say on that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but this is a personal story from my own experience. I started life as a PE teacher.
Okay.
And in the late 60s, I was at a very famous English PE college in the north of England. I won't mention the name, but it's in Yorkshire. And anybody listening who knows me or knows PE and sport will immediately know where I mean. It was in Leeds. And I remember sitting in a lecture once and banter around the lecture about whether black people could ever make good footballers. And people were saying then, this is in 66, 67, oh, they dribble too much, but they don't know how to share the ball. They'll never make it to the big league. No, but this was educated men, because it's a men's college, having that kind of discussion. Fast forward, now we know that's rubbish. Very few managers. Why? Oh, they'll never make good managers. So another generation, that'll change as well.
Yeah.
But I think this just goes with the territory. I think that we have to put up with that. But let's go back to the matter of politics. We've got a good selection, it seems to me, of ethnic minorities, if we want to use that expression. It's a good expression to use. But tell me this, if you're sitting in the front bench and you turn round and look at the people behind you, particularly the new intake, is that pretty mixed or not really?
I think the new intake, the people that came in 2024, they are mixed. Yeah. But I will say this, the Conservatives have a black female leader, Kemi Badenoch, but she's there on the front bench now. But if you're looking at her, and she's got her back to fellow Conservative MPs, and she's speaking to Parliament as a whole, and you can see her colleagues, her Tory colleagues, you can see that some of those Tory colleagues who are looking at her back, and she can see their face. And they're perhaps not as impressed with her as they might be, but you can't see it because she's got her back to her own colleagues, and we can see her face. So things are moving forward. As I said earlier, you've got a black leader of the party and so on. Things are moving forward, but in some ways, particularly now with all the issues about the economy and so on, there is still a way to go.
I agree. Yeah, I think things do take time, painfully, depending on which end of the stick you are.
Yeah, yes.
But I think that's true, and we just have to accept that. We just have to accept that and move on.
Yeah.
And live, as my mother used to say, that you are an ambassador. No matter what you do, you're an ambassador for your own people, and remember that. But I want to ask you something even more fundamental, if it can be more than race. It's about the perceptions of the general public towards professionals like you. Your own long parliamentary experience, you must be aware of the low esteem that politicians in the UK, I can't talk about Germany or France or Switzerland, in the UK are held by the voters. And you might be aware of Sir Anthony Seldon's book, written in 2009, 2010, Trust, How We Lost It and How to Get It Back. If you haven't read it, I do recommend it. I have it at home, and it's really a worthwhile book to read. Polls that I've read recently show that between 9 to 11% trust politicians to tell the truth. A few more trust political parties, 12% to tell the truth, 12%. Only 24% say they trust Parliament. And about 27% say they trust government. A few more, 34% say they trust local government. Why do you think these numbers are so consistently low when it comes to trust? And the research goes back to the 1960s in some cases, so it's not a new thing. Does it worry you? Then what must be done? What are you doing in your own position to get trust back?
Trust is a very important issue, but one of the things that has undermined trust is the rise of online. And the more you know about politicians, the more you know about the political world, the more likely you are to be sceptical. I mean, if you know, in the days when people knew less about politicians, they were more likely to respect them. The less you respect politicians, the more scepticism you see. But sometimes things happen which makes people think again about politics and the reliability of politicians. And sometimes politicians take up an issue and it resonates with the public. For instance, a few years ago, there was a big scandal about people of Caribbean origin who were born in the Caribbean, came to Britain in the 50s and 60s, and they were called the Windrush generation.
I'm one of them, Diane. I'm one of them, yeah. Born in Jamaica, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, politicians drove that issue. And, you know, in that context, people did take politicians seriously because it's something they knew about. I think one of the things about politics nowadays is people don't necessarily know the background to an issue. Well, I think that people know less about politics day by day, are more cynical about politics, and yet, when it matters, you want to hear from politicians. I mean, the Windrush, it was politicians. I was involved in it a little bit. People want to hear from politicians in moments of difficulty.
So you talk, just to be clear, you're talking issues or party politics, or both? Issues, yeah.
Issues. I think there are moments when people want to hear from, people, whatever their actual party, if you like. But it's about issues. People want to hear about issues still after all this time. And I think it's going to continue to be like that.
But go to your own constituency, which is a big one. It's a highly dense. I know the area well. My son used to live in your constituency. It's a dense population. How do you do that? Do you do that do you have town hall meetings, or is it just through your surgery? How do you communicate with, is it the same old faces that come through the door of your surgery, or do you get lots of new faces that come to see you?
Well,
was that a different issue altogether?
Well, in a constituency like Hackney, people really look to their Member of Parliament.
Yeah.
Because they're not necessarily as informed, they're not necessarily as knowledgeable, and they look to their MP to explain things to do them, to help them, and so on. So people do tend to have a closer relationship with ordinary men and women. They look to their members of parliament to help them and support them.
And do you have town hall meetings, or is that old-fashioned now?
No, I do have meetings. I do have meetings. Because I think it's so important that people meet and understand.
I agree.
And relate to their member of parliament. Because otherwise it can be so remote.
Sure.
And I try not to be remote. I try and meet with people, engage with people. And that, I think, that actually meeting with your member of parliament personally, people being able to come to see you and ask questions. I think that, and it's not always the case in politics nowadays, but if people are able to do that, that does build a loyalty to their MPs, an understanding of their MPs that you don't necessarily get it.
No, I agree with you, and I'm really pleased to hear you say that. Last question, and neither you nor I are getting any younger. Will you retire to Jamaica, London, or elsewhere to write your political memoirs?
Well, I had a biography written. And
really? You have that? Oh, I didn't know that.
I have a biography written. Yeah. But I also have an autobiography, which I wrote myself.
Oh, I didn't know that either. Okay.
Yeah, I wrote myself. And it was really interesting because I didn't realise that I was elected in 1987, and there were four of us, Bernie, Paul, and Keith Vaz, in fact. But
sorry, I didn't understand. Oh, four
MPs,
coloured, black,
four black MPs
in the House of Commons intake. Is that what you meant?
Altogether,
at that time,
in 87, yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, I didn't understand what you meant.
Yeah, I wasn't clear. Yeah. In 87, you only had four black members of parliament, one of South Asian origin actually, and three of African and Afro-Caribbean origin, and it's been a really interesting period, and changes in the population of parliament actually, in terms of colour and in terms of people's interests, and I'm very glad to see, as I said earlier, that there's
sex and gender as well. In fact, when you started, gender was a word hardly used. Now you have to say sex and gender to be careful.
Yeah. No, things have moved on in that sense. And I hope that people seeing people that look more like them does help to build a little confidence. But then when you have scandals like the Peter Mandelson scandal, that just plays into the idea that we're all corrupt, we're all in it for ourselves. And that is very sad, because I would say that most members of parliament, both Labour, Conservative, Lib Dems, they're really in it because they want to help people. They want to make things better for people, and it's so upsetting when the kinds of corruption you get around people like Peter Mandelson, that becomes apparent, because it undermines everybody.
And I think also we have to say there's also a sexual nature which appeals to people that like to buy newspaper headlines. I remember we're both old enough to remember the Profumo scandal, and that was juicy because of the nature of the misdemeanors.
Exactly.
The call girls and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, that's right. No, people like that sort of thing. Yeah. And to be honest, at the current time with Epstein, you've got Prince Andrew, and people love reading about that.
Royalty.
People love so royalty and sexual adventures, an incredible combination.
And he gives people so much to get their teeth into as well.
Yeah, it does.
Dan, look, thanks for answering all my questions so frankly and honestly. I wish you well in this current parliamentary session, and I'll watch with interest how British politics and the Labour government develop in the time left until the next general election, which I think is 2029. I'm not sure.
Well,
it's around that time.
Well, it is
5
that
years,
time, but there's so much going on. Yeah. People are wondering if we might not go to an earlier general election because there's so much instability.
No. My guest today has been the Right Honourable Diane Abbott, Member of Parliament for Hackney North, Stoke Newington, and Mother of the House of Commons. Enjoy your stay in Geneva. Safe trip back to London, and thanks for making time for me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the McKay Interview podcast. You can find my show on most of the leading podcast platforms, plus the complete playlist dating back to 2012 can be found by writing The McKay Interview into your browser. Thanks again for listening.